Please welcome my adventurous and curious friend, Gareth Hermann. Gareth is an entrepreneur, an ops nut like I am. Hey, hey, an expat, also like me, a fellow lover of travel and steel ponies, and an aspiring overseas real estate mogul. Most recently, built and sold a seven-figure digital marketing agency pioneering impact marketing, which we're going to get into as far as what impact marketing is. Nowadays, though, he splits his time between Nosara in Costa Rica and Boulder, Colorado. Two nice places to be. So today we're going to be learning what it takes to build a Geodome village in Costa Rica and jamming on his new simplified version of EOS that is easy to implement and actually creates results. Please welcome Gareth. How you doing, bud?
Super excited to connect.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So let's chat on the Geodome village first on what you're calling new paradigm. Yeah. What's this? What's the
Yeah.
background on it?
So I believe that we have over indexed on the paradigm of individualism, and we're actually craving and needing more connection and more community. I mean, you and I met through an entrepreneur community, right? And that's like one of the best weekends of the year is to do the global gathering. We all get together, we're masterminding, we're connecting, we're doing fun things together. And I feel like that's really what the world needs right now. And that is what's going to get us through these challenging times. And my framing around this is going from the paradigm of individualism to the paradigm of communalism. And that's different than like communism or collectivism because those are experiences we tried socially that didn't work, frankly. And so that's not the answer. But I would say that most people can agree that what we've got going on right now, especially in the US, isn't the answer either. It's clearly not working and it's not creating the outcomes we all want and clearly have the resources capable of creating. And so when I think about communalism, it's really going back to a more ancient way of living that I think we've gone away some of our core human biology. I like to bring in some bioneurology around this of, okay, well, how does dopamine work? How does oxytocin work? How does serotonin work? Well, a lot of those chemicals get released by feeling like you're a part of a group, that you belong, that you have strong family ties, that you have strong friendships. And that's just baked in. I think you're traveling around the world right now. You're in the DR, the Dominican Republic. I bet you there is a strong sense of feeling of community to a lot of these different smaller villages that are probably surrounding you there. And I think that's something that we've gone away from that is actually hurting us biologically. It's reducing the amount of serotonin and oxytocin we receive on a daily basis. And I think that's why we have a lot of depression and anxiety and all these other things. I think a lot of that stems from the feeling of isolation and aloneness. And it's me versus the world until you get a partner. And then it's me and my partner versus the world. And then you have a family to take care of. And that is an intense amount of pressure. You're battling in the game of capitalism against everyone else in the playing field. And that's stressful. And most people buckle under that pressure, and it takes only a few succeed. So I thought to myself, when have I felt the best in my life? And a lot of the time, and maybe you can relate to this in your own story, is okay, was that high school sports team? Maybe it was the dorms in college. As an adult, it was like maybe a festival experience like Burning Man or another festival over the world, or starting a company and having a team. So, what do all those things have in common? Well, it's a group of humans. They have a shared mission and purpose that they're trying to achieve, that they're working together to achieve. And those humans are in close proximity, and you have to rely on each other to achieve the goal. So, if you're on a sports team, you have to win. You have to get the ball across the finish line. Or if you're building a Burning Man camp, you've got like 4 days to build camp in the dust storm. And so you really need each other. And that really creates these deep social bonds and connections that I found really fulfilling and meaningful to me. And so I thought to myself, well, why do I have to go back to my life from these amazing experiences? How do I get that sports team feeling back? How do I get back to that sense of I belong, or like these are my people? And um, and in my story, I didn't really have a great experience growing up in the U.S. I lived in this neighborhood. There was like two other kids. They were pretty far apart, and one of them, was kind of a dick. And yeah, it was like we didn't. It was just not fun, living in the neighborhood. There's a bunch of old people, and it was not a great experience. And I compare that to how I grew up, which was I was born in Germany, and then my dad got hired to build a Waldorf school in southern Portugal for a bunch of German farmers living down there. And there, I grew up as a kid. We had our little house, the neighboring farmhouse. I had Hubert was there. He was like my second dad. So when my dad would go to work, I would then go over to my second dad's house and we would drive around on the tractor all day. And we had a farm. We had cows. We had sheep. We had chickens. We had a vegetable garden. We had a big lake, and we had a couple of Dutch families, a couple of English families, mostly German families, and a couple of Portuguese families, all living in this like farming valley. And we were just running around every day having a blast. So that's what I came from. And then when I came to the U.S., it really sucked compared to that. So as an adult, I'm trying to get back to some of that feeling of belonging and connection to community, to nature, and that's the core inspiration for this project.
Amazing. Okay. A couple interesting threads in there. One of them is so I have this idealized version of your childhood, early childhood. You're on this farm, communal living, um, in southern Portugal, and I think I'm curious as to why did y'all leave that, and what's happened to that communal living setup since over the past 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I love that you're asking this question because for me, like you said, I'm an ops nerd and I really care about implementation and effectiveness. And so it's a weird, I straddle two different worlds, coming from the
Yeah,
business
totally
world where
different.
all that matters is results and outcomes. And then living in community is all about the feeling of connection and belonging and relationships. So those worlds have to meet. And a lot of communities out there do it terribly. They lack the practical, real world experience and operations, for lack of a better term, to actually be effective in being a community. And so that's why a lot of these intentional communities around the world, they get a bad rap because they're usually founded by some sort of like spiritually guided, visionary, semi-crazy individual that has attracted a lot of followers. And then they just go live together and it turns into disaster. So that's usually what happens. And this how I grew up was a little bit different because there was no guru, and furthermore, there wasn't even an established community. It was just a organic evolution of people moving to this valley and trying to get away from the nuclear fallout of Chernobyl in the 80s, and yeah, just wanting to just live a more natural and wholesome life. So there wasn't like this we're doing a community experience growing up. It just sort of happened. And um, the reason we left, to answer your question, was because, as we got into the 90s, a lot of the kids started to get older. And this is before the European Union. Back then, Portugal was like a second world country. It really had, terrible infrastructure. There's one highway in the entire country. Think like cobblestone streets, like sometimes you'd like take the moped or someone would be driving a donkey through town. It was a different world back then. And so the education system was all rote. It was all old school. And the education system was pretty bad. So there was a sort of brain drain that happened as kids got older. Families then moved back to Germany, back to Holland. In our case, we moved to the US so that the kids could get access to good education. Not everyone did that, but that's slowly what happened over time. And so the lack of education was for young adults was really the primary motivation for people to leave that experience. And at the same time, the Waldorf school is still running, and it now is for Portuguese students as well. And that sort of took off and is thriving. The farm is still there. There's still people living there. There's a whole new generation of kids now. Like my three sisters, that were not really my sisters, but Hubert's daughters. They all still live there. They all have kids now, and so when we go back to visit, it's like a 2.0 version is happening, and it's really really special to see.
That's cool. Yeah, I have a friend of mine who lives not in the valley of Portugal that he grew up in, but lives north of Lisbon, in a town called Ericeira. similar organic growth to it. People came from different reasons. They've come with young kids, and they're going through the same brain drain even in 2024, 2025, because they get to a point where the kids are old enough and there's not a good school system for them, and they wind up leaving and going elsewhere. And so it's a real pain, and they're all looking around going like, we should build our own school. They don't really want to run a Waldorf, like another school, let's say. And yeah, so I understand it's still happening even in 2025. So what do you envision with the new paradigm villa, or village, as far as what would education look like in it? Like, how are you, having grown up in a Waldorf school and then gotten, a traditional education in the States, gone to James Madison in Virginia, and like how do you marry the two of those?
That's a really great question. So, one thing I think the first response to that is pick your battles. I'm not choosing to pick that battle right now. And the reason being is because I chose Nosara in part because it has a Waldorf school already here. It has a wild school. It has like several alternative schools for kids that are young, and then it has an IB high school here. And so those are all uh, really great community assets that I want to leverage. And you'll hear this more in the project is, what do we really need to own inside the project? And what are the community assets that we can leverage and be a part of? Like, we're part of an ecosystem here. We don't have to do everything from scratch. And so that specifically is something that Nasari already offers, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. That being said, I am very passionate about education. And at some point, I would like to create a new school system that does marry both worlds. For example, in Waldorf school, they develop you as almost like a human soul first and foremost. And they, just through the way they teach, there's no textbooks. You create everything yourself. It's all about intrinsic motivation. You're creating your own textbooks. You're doing art. You're learning theater. You're learning. I mean, you have to do like like Roman sports and participate.
Following
In
curiosity.
Yeah, exactly. It's really amazing in many ways, and you have to do everything collaboratively, and you work on your own. And it's not like sit down and learn this thing. Everything's like storytelling, and I had a really amazing experience at the Waldorf school growing up until a certain point. At a certain point, your brain starts to develop, and I didn't feel like I was challenged enough. And for example, you mentioned James Madison University. I got a degree in integrated science and technology, which is a pioneer program that combines all the STEM. It's pretty much engineering, manufacturing, computer programming, environmental science, energy, telecommunications. It's interdisciplinary problem solving, real world problems, a lot of physics, a lot of math, and super intense. And that was the challenge that I needed. And I think what we're capable of as humans is to, yeah, really be challenged intellectually. But if you take traditional school route, that's all they focus on. You get like a 30-minute recess class. That's also out of balance. So again, in when we were talking before the podcast, I'm a real big fan of integral theory. And one of the principles in integral theory is as consciousness evolves, transcend and include, which means don't reject the previous stage of consciousness, take the benefits of it, include it, and then continue to evolve on top of that. And that's my philosophy on education is how do we get the best of both worlds and integrate versus, a lot of alternative people just want to go back to the past or do this alt thing. And I think that really taking the best of everything and putting it together is what I would personally like for my kids.
So, for those who are not familiar with integral theory, describe it verbally, what it looks like visually. It's a spiral or it's a triangle. Like, how does it visually represent itself?
Great. So integral theory was developed by Ken Wilber, who is an amazing philosopher and visionary, and he took spiral dynamics. So I would say it probably comes from a spiral, but he sort of maps it more in a progression, from the bottom upwards. And the basic idea is that we started off in like red, which is a hunter gatherer tribal environment where might makes right, and the dominant leader controls the village or the territory through fear, and they're the strongest man. And that's valuable at that stage of consciousness because it allows you to protect the tribe, conquer territory, and secure resources in competition with other groups. The evolution past that is more of I think it's blue is the color, but that evolution allows the caste system, it allows hierarchy, it allows structure in society based on role and rank and title, as opposed to just pure brute force. And what that unlocks is the society's ability to execute longer term projects and to have social stratification and think strategically and execute things over a long period of time, like build a pyramid or build a city or build an aqueduct, which is not always possible when you're sort of in like warring tribe mode. So that's the unlock there. And then the downside in that system is that there's not much innovation or achievement, because if you're born into a caste, you're going to stay there for the rest of your life. If you're born into royalty, you will be royalty. And so that's the downside of that system, which then we evolved into meritocracy or orange, which is the world of capitalism. And that's where a lot of the world lives today, which is about innovation, achievement, individualism. And that unlock really says that it doesn't matter who you are or where you were born. If you have the best idea, if you add the most value, you will win. And so it really unlocks innovation and creativity for a population to anyone could take their shot. The downside is that if we overfocus on individualism and success and achievement, we can actually do things that are harmful for society that we're rewarded for inside of the game. Yeah, for example. And so and that's really the next evolution out of that is green, which is collectivism, which is all about the group. It's about feelings. It's about caring for all. It's really this worldview that takes others into consideration and wants to be inclusive and wants to play team and wants to bring everyone together and for there to be respect and harmony and peace and all these beautiful things. The downside and the shadow side is that it lacks self-awareness, and so it's dogmatic and judgmental in its approach. So it's almost it can really rub people the wrong way because someone's being dogmatic about not being dogmatic and can't listen and can't actually hear and can't receive feedback and is just operating in a massive blind spot. And so that lack of self-awareness really holds back green. And then that's when you get into teal, which is the breakthrough, at which point you can realize that there's value in all the different stages of consciousness, and you start to implement them, and you go into that transcend and include model where you take the best from each and start to put them together. And you're sort of operating in this sort of superhuman state at that point, to the last stage where you are sort of in a state of enlightenment, where you are everything and you're one with everything, and you can access those states of consciousness. So that's my summary of integral theory. And that's just one part of it, I should say. That's the spiral. There's other, 4 quadrants and all these other things. But I think as what we're talking to, both as starting a new village, and what I imagine we'll talk about later on in the podcast around teams and business, this framework applies to everything, and that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah, we can get into it now, because I'm imagining that as you have different people on the team, in the community, in the group, who are at different levels on this, on this spiral dynamic, or on the spiral as it goes upward. Somebody who's in red, somebody who's in green, somebody who's in blue, somebody who's in orange. They're not locked in those levels, but I think if you're at blue, let's say at the top, again, it's kind of let's use a hierarchy, because it's a better way to put it. But like, you're looking down and going like, okay, cool. Like, you can see where this person is. You can see also as you move up and down between them. Don't you then again perpetuate the like you have to be the leader basically. Like you're going to wind up in the same kind of like dynamic of where you have to again lead the group because not everybody's a blue. Let's say.
Correct. So this is what I'm really passionate about is leadership, because that is leadership. It is being able to meet your team or other stakeholders where they're at, and being able to speak their language, to have that social awareness, that empathy, to understand where they're at, where they're operating from, what they're trying to achieve in their own life or in the conversation or in the meeting or in the business partnership or what have you, and meet them there. And again, that's why I love this model, is because you have to be fluid and dynamic. For example, there were times at Magic, my last business, where I had to step into red, that just to get nerdy on you guys, we had the iOS 14 updates, a while back, where until that point, before that point, everyone was crushing it on ads. Because we were in a data rich environment. And then all of a sudden, Apple and Facebook get into a war, and suddenly the data quality drops, and all of our campaigns start massively underperforming.
Dumping.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that did you have an experience of that? Did you go through
No,
that?
yeah, I know that that was data apocalypse, right? Like all of a sudden, yeah,
Yes.
everybody built ad campaigns on the data they were getting from iOS,
Yeah.
so that river of data dry up. Please.
Exactly. And so in that moment, I had to step into red mode because the team was freaking out. And if I tried to do more of a green process and have everyone share their feelings and all of that, it would have made the situation worse. But I dropped in red. I was like, all right, guys, here's what we're doing. We're going to create the iOS 14 playbook. We're going to get it out there. We're going to figure out what works now in this new thing. And we're going to, be thought leaders. We're going to be strategic partners to our clients. And here's the game plan. Let's go. No time for anything else, really. It's like we're all going to focus on this playbook. And so that was a red move, even though I had a pretty green organization. Like one of our core values was being real. And one of the ways that we built such an amazing team culture, even though we were, this has also happened during COVID, we were an entirely digital business at one point, but we still had a really strong sense of culture with our core values and really deep personal relationships. And yeah, that was, I was able to bring a lot of green in as the culture, but then, shift that. Like sometimes we had to be, hey, listen, we're operating the game of capitalism. We're in a hierarchy here. You're the copywriter. This is your job. This is what success looks like. Like,
Yeah.
yes, we all value each other as human beings, and we all have a say when it comes to our weekly Friday check-in call where we do acknowledgments and celebrations and reflections from the week. And also, did you get your 4 ads done for this client? And so that was my approach, is again trying to
You have
integrate.
to marry the dichotomy, though. Basically, yeah, be like, we value you as a human. You're paid for a certain outcome or a set of skills that
Exactly.
enable
And
this
that
entity to keep functioning. Yeah.
and that was that's part of my struggle is, or was, for example, this is, by the end of scaling Magic and selling it, I was actually pretty jaded because I felt that leadership conflict. Like there's some of our team members that had been around since day one, or the first year, but because the way the game of business is played in the agency model, when we were only profitable when everyone was maxed out, maxed to the brim, and had a very stressful life. And that for me was in conflict with my personal values, because I value health and well-being as one of my personal values. But here I am playing this game of business where I'm only making money when my team is super stressed and they're working, a ton of hours each day. That's when the model works. If when they have a chill workload and they feel excited about their jobs, I'm literally not getting
You're
paid what
bleeding
I need.
cash. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of messed up, and that was hard. Or, for example, we lost a couple big clients. I got to lay off some team members, and it felt like I was, one of my team members. He didn't deserve to be laid off. He was doing his job really well, but that role just wasn't necessary for the company to survive. And so I felt like I was on a ship that was sinking, and on a life raft, and literally there's like having to kick people off of the boat. And and they were my friends that I built really deep intimate relationships with, that we'd done so much great work together, and that was brutal. And so, yeah, it's when you operate business and leadership from a more heart open, integral way, it's hard. It was really challenging for me.
What was the You had a co-founder in Magic, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What was the dynamic between you and the co-founder? And why I ask that is because in my mind, you have, let's call it, one person who's the visionary or creates the, yeah, one person the visionary and the other person who implements it, right? Like if you want to use a model from communism, you have the Marx who writes the Communist Manifesto, and then you have the Lenin, the one who actually like implements. I'm not saying Magic was this, but just like as a means of like trying to understand the personalities, like who in the organization.
Okay, so this was a very interesting situation because my business partner was the digital marketing expert and was really amazing at sales. And those were his two main strengths. So he was the CEO as a result because he needed to be out there that title to get the whale clients and to work with clients that we had, but at the same time, he wasn't, I had more of the business operations experience from previous startups. And, we were jamming a little bit about like starting work in high school. I had my first business in high school. So I had a lot more business experience in startups, and he had some as well, but it wasn't his zone of genius versus mine. So in a strange way, I was often setting the vision for like what our culture should be like, and where are we going in the marketplace, and like and my business partner was more like, let's get the revenue, let's make the money, let's get the clients in the door, and that was more his approach. So um, yeah, there was I was straddling both some of the visionary as well as the operations and execution.
And now it's got to be tough for you with a new paradigm because you have to do both, right? Like you're trying to both bring in
Yes.
money, investors, let's say, and also ensure that the people who are brought in are on board with the vision and yeah, that they're part of the team.
Yeah, so exactly, and that's been a real challenge because if I'm working with another team or another founder, it's so easy for me to extract the vision from them, play it back to them, help them clarify it, translate that into clear goals, organize the team in terms of roles and responsibility, execute those goals, train them on time management and project management, and hold them accountable to making that actually happen. So that's really easy for me to do for someone else. But when it's my vision, it's like sometimes I struggle to articulate and clearly communicate the true energy behind the vision that is inspiring, and then likewise then being able to translate that into my own project plans, financial model, yeah, the real estate, market research work, and execution of that. It's definitely a challenge doing both, right? Because I'm like raising the money, at the same time I got to update the financial model. I'm like scouting land actively. I'm working on de-risking the project by enrolling people to purchase the first lots in the community, and to build that community. And so there's like seven different trains I'm trying to push forward at the same time, which is incredibly ineffective from a efficiency standpoint. But that's where I'm at. I need to get enough momentum to attract more partners to the business, which is starting to happen. I just got a lead investor locked in a couple weeks ago. That gave me some momentum, and that, yes, that gives the people that are interested in the project more confidence, and they get more excited. So it's often a chicken and the egg thing. And then I'm also exploring conversation with someone that has already developed a successful project here in town, which him getting involved in the project would then add to our project execution credibility, which adds even more credibility to the project. And so, yeah, and at the same time last year, I had my first lead investor back out as we got closer to putting in, submitting an offer, going into due diligence. So it's a startup, it's a roller coaster, it's awesome, I love it. Sometimes I get overwhelmed and stressed out. Here we are.
And how do you square this? Yeah, this experience that you're going through. Let's put it this way: how do you square the experience you're going through in real estate with the ability that you have when you're talking to existing CEOs or people who have a business and they say, okay, cool, like I need help with EOS. They're not even familiar with EOS, and you're Yeah, because you know EOS. What I want to say in the question is, you know EOS is an operating system. I want you to explain what that means to people who don't know what it is in a second. But you
Yes.
know EOS, you're looking at an existing organization and going, okay, cool, Mr. or Miss CEO, this is like you're serving as a mirror, listening to them, getting the key stakeholders involved. That's on one side, and then on the other side, you have a real estate venture where you're, I assume, trying to operate by EOS principles, let's say, and then also you need to wear all seven of those hats that you described or push all seven of those trains forward, right? So like
Yes.
it's you have the real estate project, which is 0 to 1, and then you also have 1 to many over here, to use Peter Thiel's example of like existing businesses where they've already found product market fit where they can afford to hire you as an outside um, confidant or consigliere to come in and advise them. So, how, like, you like sitting in both of these worlds, or is there one world that you're more comfortable in?
I I love sitting in both the worlds because for me, this real estate project, the Geodome Village and the New Paradigm Village, like that's how I want my life to be. So my vision for that is really that I wake up in the morning. It's like 5 a.m. I can hear the howler monkeys. That's my natural alarm clock. I get up, I do a little morning practice before my future kids get up, and then help them get ready to school. But I get my sort of like either morning surf or nature walk in the jungle to recharge and center for the day. Then it's like I want to be doing something there during the day. Once this project is complete, I just want to be like sitting around in my villa, with my ocean view, just chilling. Like I want to be engaged in the world and active and being part of what's happening. So in that vision, I do see myself like I'm talking right here from Outpost in Nosara, which is like this high end co working place where there's a bunch of cool entrepreneurs down here, and there is a lot of creativity and things happening, and that really excites me. I feel like I've really tapped into a unique zone of genius here in the work that I do with companies, and I want to be doing that every day. And then I want to turn off. It's I want to go watch this. The cultures here is everyone stops working at like 5, goes watches the sunset on the beach, and then it's a natural connection point. I don't even have to plan anything. Just go to the beach. I know I'm going to bump into friends, and then with those friends, we'll either go for a sunset surf, throw the frisbee, have some fun, and then it translates to a dinner, usually at someone's house, and then you go home and you're in bed by you're in bed by like 8:39, and that's life. And so
Yeah.
that's the millionaire lifestyle, right? That's how I want to be living every day. It's also what I call like the biorhythmic lifestyle, like really being away, from like 5G, Wi-Fi, big cities, noise pollution, light pollution. You just get tired early. I wake up, no alarm clock. You just sort of the life force of Costa Rica has a big impact on your central nervous system. It just sort of takes over in a way that I find very healing and recharging. So to answer your question, this project is really about developing this community and making that reality possible for my future kids. At the same time, like you said, I really enjoy if I hop on with the CEO and they're stressed out about their day, they're getting sucked into the weeds, the day to day, their team, and they really have this cool new project that they want to do to grow the business or to expand the brand, but they just feel like they're like chained to their business because now they're at a certain scale. It's just a nightmare for them, and I can relate to that because that's what I had to do with Magic the entire way up. We raised zero capital. So I was our project manager for every single client. I was our bookkeeper. I was our recruiter. I was all the low level positions until we made enough money that I could be the HR manager and then I was the chief people officer. And then we hired a chief people officer. I was the bookkeeper, we hired a controller. Okay. Then I was the CFO, and so on and so forth. And so I know what it's like to be in the weeds and everything, and to have whatever it is, 6 8 Zoom calls a day, and then your normal workload. And so we had to get super good as an agency to just get so dialed on everything, from the quality of the product we delivered to the time management to the project management. And that's how I'm able to do this today. That's how I'm able to do a real estate project and have my other business, is that I had just become a master of resource management inside of a company. And so it's very easy for me to go to a CEO, and I've created a very simple framework that's based off of leadership, systems, and team that allows us to. And then I also have some coaches that I can bring in where we actually take the achievement of what the business is trying to do off the CEO's hands or operator's hands and transfer that weekly accountability to our coaching team so that the results happen with no handholding and oversight from the CEO. And that's something that I feel really excited that we're doing right now. That's pretty unique because what most people struggle with is that implementation. Usually a CEO will just be like, we'll just work harder. I'm an entrepreneur. I know I have the skills to just make things happen. And they project those skills onto employees, which are a different kind of mindset and animal. And so as opposed to like constantly fighting that and trying to coach the CEO or the leader to change their leadership style, we just say, hey, you go do what you go sell, you go build the vision, you start the new creative project. We'll handle making sure the team is hitting its goals and doing everything they need to grow the business. And that gets them out of the weeds. And it also helps the team because the team finally gets the support that they need. They want to have someone to help them with their roadblocks and tell them what to do sometimes and help them figure out a hairy problem. And that's what we do. So it kind of serves both employees and the leadership team.
So then, am I understanding correctly that you're transmuting the CEO's vision into action steps for the team? Or the team, if they have questions about it, they're coming to you. Not say to Gareth, they're coming to the people inside of
Yes.
the coach that you've assigned to the CEO to say, the CEO says, whatever, we need to hit 100. That's the KPI for the quarter. What does that mean for me personally? What's the dialogue look like between?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it depends on the size of the organization, but the high performance framework is, the part of the leadership bucket, right? I mentioned we have leadership, team, and systems. So part of leadership's job is to have a clear vision and then to clearly communicate that. So we can help with that through a workshop if that's not clear. That vision then gets translated into goals. I personally like OKRs because they ladder up and that solves the problem that you're talking about. So it doesn't matter if you're a higher level executive, a manager, or an employee, all of each level in the hierarchy, the goals need to ladder up to meet the company goals that that turn the vision into a reality. And so we do goal setting workshops to help teams that suck at goal setting, which a lot of them do. And then
you have to surface what the goals are first for each one of those
correct.
levels, right?
That's
Done that. Yeah.
exactly. So step one is having that clear vision. Okay, then step two is you translate that vision into clear goals for each department, each team, each person. And then that creates unstoppable momentum because now you have each team member, each department working in lockstep towards the same goal. And that's what creates momentum. And then the last hack is to add in the support and accountability, the regular communication and check-in on each team member, each team to make sure it's making progress. Because as humans, we get caught up in the day-to-day, we get distracted, we avoid things, we get stuck by a problem, and then we just stop. And so sometimes projects get stuck for a whole quarter or a whole year, and our methodology enables that momentum to keep rolling. And then that's where you really get to this. What we're creating is like a self-managing team that's executing towards its goals in lockstep, and that's the outcome that we then provide.
Super interesting, yeah, because I can imagine, running teams of. Well, I run different teams, and that I'll make it personal. So I'll come to the brand owner, the business owner, and go, okay, cool. Like, what's the KPI for this quarter? Let's say it's 100, and then that tends to be where that discussion stops because then it doesn't transmute down to the people that they actually manage to say, if 100 is the KPI for the organization, then your part of this is A, and this other person's part is B, and that means that A plus B is going to get us to 100, or A plus B plus the efforts of others is going to get us to 100. And there's there could just be like this general breakdown of like they don't understand why what they're doing, how it manifests itself in the top line KPI. right?
Correct. And that's a huge
Yeah.
breakdown because that also gives people meaning and purpose. If the factory worker or the copywriter or the web developer understands that what they do actually is really meaningful for the company and that people are relying on them, I believe that's something that everyone wants. Everyone wants to do good work. Everyone wants to be on a team that's winning. Everyone wants to be making progress towards goals. And that's the energy of winning, the energy of momentum. That's what we're really bringing here. And collaboration, it's like, hey, we're trying to achieve this together. Lacking that, like one of the clients that I'm working with right now, they're infighting because they lack that, and they are blaming each other. They're criticizing the teammate because lacking that goal that the tribe is trying to work together with to accomplish. Then it's about personal achievement, climbing the ladder, and that's really it. It's just trying to, make progress yourself and then getting frustrated with your teammates that are hindering your progress. And that culture won't win. That's not going to create innovation. That's not going to kick ass in the marketplace. And
And make
and
people feel
that's
really fulfilled.
yeah, people get stressed out because then it just all turns out it's all about the money. And yeah, it's not the world that I personally want to see uh, out there.
Yeah, I've got a question on that because basically, you've got this again a dichotomy of you have this, let's call it the CEO of the brand, and you say, okay, cool, he needs to care about the money. The money is ultimately what pays the salaries of these different people and whatnot. Everyone else, to a lesser degree, cares about the money, and yet they need a more holistic or uh, a nicer goal rather than money. If they're in sales, yeah, then yes, they're probably going to care about the money. But let's assume, in my example, they're not. Let's assume they're more creatives. And the process of going from like, okay, cool, CEO, he cares about the money, $100, 100, using my example. Everyone else, all the creatives, you were managing teams of creatives, copywriters, designers, and sort of stuff. How do you get them to come up with a goal, or how do you get that goal to translate from 100 over here to whatever is going to motivate them?
Yeah, really easy. So and the whole point is to make sure that everyone's bought into the company vision, and you can add in a company mission or purpose, so that can really help with the emotional engagement. And then when you do get the goal, let's say it's 100, let's take the designer, let's take the copywriter, you actually facilitate a conversation. I could easily tell them, but I find it more powerful to create the space where they discover that on their own. Okay, so if the goal is 100, how does your role tie into that? I don't know. Okay, well, let's think about it for a second. How might it be? If you do a good job, what part of your job would actually impact this number? Oh, well, I never thought about that. Well, I guess if I do a really good job on these designs, then yeah, they'll convert better. And if they convert better, then the client will want to spend more money with us. I guess, right? Yeah. How does it work again with like, do we get a percentage of ad spend, right? Yes, exactly. So it really is educating and informing and helping people connect those dots. They see, wow, if I do a better job on this graphic design for this ad, then that helps my client win. When the client wins, they're going to want to spend more money with us. When they spend more money with us, then we get closer to our goal. So I'm actually a key person in this team, even though I'm a graphic designer and I'm an important person as a result. And I know if I want to get a raise, like money just doesn't grow. It's like it doesn't grow on trees. It's just, we're going to need to do well as a team. If we're crushing as a team, there's going to be more money to go around. If we're not doing well as a team, there's going to be less money to go around. And just really making it clear for people that, just breaking down this sort of employee mindset of just like, I show up, I do my job, I go home. And that doesn't really work well for the employee or the business owner, in my opinion.
So how are you going to square this with new paradigm then? Because you're asking people who come in that they need to put some money into buying land, and I imagine some of them go, "Hey, Gareth, I just don't have the money for this, but I'd love to be a part of it."
Great. So in
Small
that
fry.
scenario, yeah,
Yeah.
we've got a couple different options. Like one, I've started a partnership with a bank down here that allows people to loan money and get a construction loan to build a home. So that's one option. So you can borrow money to get in the game. And then another option is that we're exploring um, taking some of the parcels and selling them to individuals that have formed a corporation that buys the lot, so that they can actually do multifamily or some other multiple homes on one lot, so they can reduce the cost of land acquisition by partnering on going in on the land. And that is a real piece of this is affordability. Like where I'm at in Nosara, the prices are insane for Central America, and a lot of these communities as well. As it's, if you think about it, it's if you really get into real estate, a lot of the money goes into purchasing the land, developing the infrastructure, water, electricity, roads, amenities for the community. It's expensive, and then you have the team and the marketing, and yeah, it just gets expensive pretty quick. And so they tend to be expensive projects, especially if you want to have some cool community assets like a yoga shala, a pool, or people want a retreat center. That's often not possible just in a generic development business model, because it would drive the costs too high. So one of my goals for the project is to do affordable housing, and that's where the geodomes came in, because though the cost of construction is so low for the geodomes that they are very affordable. And if we can get the right zoning designation and we can do mixed use or higher density development, then you can put many geodomes on one parcel, and then the cost of construction is really low. So that's another affordability hack. So I've been really looking at all the different ways to how do you reduce costs, how do you reduce the barrier to entry, and part of my doing that is I would like to have this model be replicable and scalable across the world, because I know so many other people are wanting to live in community and build community together, but they lack the real estate development experience, the business experience, the community building experience. A lot of people just have one, like, oh, I'm a great community builder, or I'm in real estate, or I was an entrepreneur, but you really have to tie all those pieces together, which is why so many of these projects fail, or stop halfway through, or don't get traction. So it's an interesting time, because there's a lot of demand, a lot of enthusiasm, but then execution is poor, and then also, yeah, people are
It's
struggling
hard.
financially. Yeah,
Yeah, it's hard to
get
do.
going.
Yeah.
Especially once you're in like a different country with a different legal environment, people are nervous about bringing their money outside the country. Now you're operating in these jurisdictions where bureaucracy and process, and it's a lot.
So if I can play devil's advocate for a moment, then if you, it sounds like, I imagine this morning you woke up with the howler monkeys as your alarm clock. You and I started swapping voice notes pretty early in the morning for you, I imagine. Um, if you went to the beach today at 5 o'clock, you're going to run into a couple of friends or some people that go out for the sunset surf, go to dinner. Do you already have the community in Nosara that you are trying to build? Like, is this like would it be easier for Gareth as the individual to build the house that he would like there and not try to do a real estate development to include others, and just say like Nosara has enough of the community that I'm looking for?
The answer is yes, if that's enough for you. For example, that's what we have right now. Everyone has their own little home. You meet at the outpost, the co-working space. You meet at the beach. Literally what you just said is my day. Like literally this evening, my parents are visiting. We're going to meet at the beach for sunset. I have a friend from out of town. We're going to meet at the beach for sunset. My other friend already invited us to dinner afterwards. This is literally my day right now. Right? It's
Yeah.
great. However, there's
Most
a
people
next
listening
level.
are going to go, that sounds amazing. Like I would just like that. 99% of people, yeah.
And that's great. That's why there's homes available here in Nosara. People come down, they build their dream home, they live here. And for someone like me, there are enough freaks like me out there in the world that want to go one level deeper and be able to walk to their best friends. They want to be able to, they want to be able to live intergenerationally. They want to be able to have their parents next door in an ADU, as opposed to trying to put them in a retirement home. They want their kids to be running around and being friends with all of their friends' kids, and for one adult to be able to scoop up all the kids, take them to the pool, so all the other adults get a break, and to share the load of child rearing amongst the community. They want to be able to have a community meal together. They want to be able to bring in a DJ, or sing around the fire, or do a sweat lodge together, and just have that all be on the same property. That's next level. That's true wealth and abundance in all the things that matter to me.
Yeah, it's interesting because having lived in Bali for a number of years, you see the pendulum swing in the opposite direction, which is they have multiple generations of the same family living under the same roof. They're not necessarily close by. They're literally they just keep adding rooms onto the houses in order to accommodate, births or family members who need to move in. To me, that model doesn't look copacetic. Doesn't look like it would lead me to feel super at peace with if I had, well, let's just say, like, I don't necessarily know I want that. Having parents close by, having friends close by, being able to walk over there, even just being able to bike over there, and shared community as far as child rearing, getting away from the car culture that's so prevalent in the U.S. I think is super appealing. So this is like a middle ground. You don't want to be let's call it Southeast Asian style of
Right
every
on top of each other.
generation underneath one roof, but you want the
Yeah.
roofs to be close. You can see one roof from the other. Let's say when you're standing on your front porch.
Transcend and include. We want privacy, we want individualism, but we want to be part of a community. So how do we do both?
Yeah. So this is an addendum to the podcast on ethical cult building, as we're talking about a documentary that looks at Osho when he moves to Oregon and attempts to set up an intentional living space in rural Oregon, and the pushback that they got from the local community and the problems that they had internally. And we're talking about, is it possible? How do you do it in terms of being able to attract the people that you want to live with and also make sure that everybody, gets along reasonably well together? So I'm skeptical of it. Gareth is in a camp where he thinks it's possible. Why am I wrong?
Okay. Well, I would say that you're right. First and foremost, the way that most communities develop is that sort of guru model. And I think that's part of the problem. And so the paradigm shift there is going away from the guru model where you have the strong leader, the spiritual leader, and everyone's following that person. That is dangerous in my opinion. And so the paradigm shift there is, again, going back to the from that model to communalism, is that the new guru will be the Sangha. There's a quote that says pretty much that there's not going to be like this one figurehead in the 21st century. It's going to be the community, the group. So in order to make that happen, we actually need to upgrade our central nervous systems and our ability to communicate to actually be in a group together. So what I mean by that is that it is normal for humans to get into conflict and for that to disrupt companies, marriages, countries, whatever. Our default programming as humans is based off of survival at its root, and that leads to conflict and tensions and breakdowns. And that's why teams, marriages, countries fail, is they just do human the normal way. So in order to participate in the paradigm of communalism, we actually need to upgrade our central nervous system and our communication in order to interact in a new way. And so a requirement to be part of this project is that people actually go through training, because in times of challenge, we either go back to what we were trained on by our parents or what's familiar to us, or we fall back on our training. So we do training, and I used to live in Boulder, Colorado, and we used to do a lot of this practice there. I started doing community homes in Boulder and practicing this stuff because I knew that if I could get 7 people under one roof to be able to work things out, that if we were just neighbors and we could go back to our own homes and like not talk to each other for a couple of days and circle back, it would be table stakes. And so what I've developed is like a very rigorous process around how to communicate, how to resolve conflict, and how to regulate your central nervous system so that you can actually do community effectively together. And what's required for that is the training to do that well. So let me give you an example. Like in a traditional argument, let's say someone gets upset, and then you go back to our programming, they get into conflict, whether that's about a pay raise, what to do with the client, who should be president, something political. And then suddenly people get triggered. They go into a fight or flight response, which means they're either going to fight, they're going to run away, they're going to freeze, or they're going to fawn. And none of those things is authentic, and it degrades the relationship, leading to an outcome that doesn't work for either party. So in the new way to do it, there's the first step is to raise self-awareness, to know when are we getting triggered, when are we getting defensive, and then when we are, to have a process to both verbalize that in a safe way and to make sure that gets met well, so that emotional safety is reestablished. Because once that happens, then you can go back to being a high functioning adult. But until that happens, you're going to be a wounded animal out on the savannah looking for survival. So the process is getting out of survival responses, getting back into executive functioning, and we have tools to do that. And then once you're back into executive functioning, there's ways that you can communicate that have been around for a while, like nonviolent communication, like using I statements, for example. Is if everyone could just own their experience and say that, hey, listen, I'm noticing I'm starting to feel a little anxiety or frustration, and not even going into the story like around the political topic or whatever, and just having that level of self-awareness and that ability to name what's happening, then it actually creates more connection, that creates more vulnerability, creates more intimacy, and then you have, again, more of that serotonin, more of that oxytocin. You feel that connection and sometimes blow-ups do happen. Someone starts yelling and we lost control. Okay, great. Let's acknowledge that happens too. No one's going to do this perfectly. We're all human. Well, but we do have a repair process where within a set period of time, those two parties come back together. They do the same process, when they're more resourced. And if they can't do that, then someone else in the community holds that structure for them. And so it's acknowledging the human experience. We are going to go into survival mode. We are going to, hate each other for a moment. But through our process, we're going to be led to coming back together into connection. And that's how we can actually live in a community versus just using isolation and distance as our only control mechanism for relationship.
Super interesting. Okay, thanks. Thank you for clarifying that.
Any comments, pushback?
Well, I think I mean, again, playing devil's advocate is somebody comes to you with the money that they need to invest in New Paradigm, and they need to go through this training first, or what's the order in which they can get involved with the community?
Yeah, exactly. It's if they want to live and be part of the project. Like if they want to buy a lot, that means you have to go through this training.
Okay, as a prerequisite, like they can't buy until they've done the training. Yeah. All right. Okay, and then as well,
I have a village charter.
They want to sell to somebody else. They got to say like, okay, cool, I've got a buyer, but we need to the buyer has to. Well,
the way I've structured this is to exactly. There's a village charter which outlines all of this, which means that yes, in order to become a member, then you have to do this training, and only members have the right to purchase land. It's almost like a club. You may probably, from the South, like a gentleman's club of sorts, or the golf course, or it's like you have to be part of the club in order to access the benefit of being able to buy the land. And so only members can transact real estate. So if you want to sell your lot, you're going to have to wait until a new member is accepted into the club that that then goes through the training that can then
but they got to be part of the club first in order for them to be able to even be considered in the buyer pool.
Exactly. But my goal with this project is that it's going to be so cool that there's going to be a list of people that are dying to get into the club, and so if you need to sell, it's not going to be a problem.
Okay, that's cool, man. Okay, so for people who want to get involved, who want either they're coming to Nosara or they want to get involved, they're interested in investing in Costa Rica, and they want to learn more about New Paradigm, or they want your help inside of you or your team's help inside of their organizations. Like, what do they do to reach out to you, or where do they go to learn more?
Great. So if they're interested in the New Paradigm Village, they can email me at gareth@garethhermann.com. I can probably send that to you and put the link in the notes.
Show notes.
And I can, that garethhermann.com is my personal website. They can read a little bit more about, the origins of the project and get some updates there. And I can send out the investor deck or the residence deck, depending on their interest. So that's the best way to get in touch with me over there. On the other side, the best email is Gareth at force22.com. And that's where we can jam on liberating CEOs and creating self-managing teams.
Yeah, because your goal, I think, for 2025 is you want to liberate 10 CEOs, right? Like that's
That's
for
right.
their low performing teams.
Yes. Yeah. Save them from
Yeah,
themselves.
save them from themselves. Good place to end. Okay, cool. Thanks so much for coming on, Gareth. Folks, if you're listening, reach out to him for either one of those two things.
So fun to jam with you, and excited to see you soon.